bridging the gap between the technical aspects and being able to communicate properly with everyone. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to my second.
Everyone, it's a Scandinavian name, so you pronounce the J like you do in Bjork. So it's M-A, Majken, and that's how you get it. And my pediatrician growing up, I had him until I was 11, and we had given up correcting him. And the very last appointment we had before we moved, he heard my grandmother call me Majken. And the look on his face when he realized he'd been calling me Majken for 10 years. You do not feel as bad as he did. So, yes. So thank you very much. Yeah, a little bit more about my background. I was shocked to realize I have been involved with Mozilla for 10 years, which is especially shocking because growing up and through high school, I was definitely the drama music geek, and I ended up somehow in the position of computer geek through osmosis, through friends, through relationships. I don't code, and that is by choice. It doesn't interest me, but computers open source using the programs do. I have a lot of experience in the past doing, like you said, user support. That was my first major Mozilla contribution. I have teenagers and an ex-husband, so I have a lot of experience with difficult communications of all kinds, including lots of news groups and in real life. So I felt like I have some expertise. I want to share. One of the skills that I have that I've been told is rare is I speak both user and developer. So one thing that people sometimes use me for is developers will have a user that started talking in their bug. They have no idea what they're doing, have no idea, no interest in handling the person. They'll ping me, you know, can you take a look at this? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, no, this guy just wants this. And they're like, how did you know that? So that's why I wanted to give this presentation today, because I think a lot of the time when we talk about communication and sensitivity, it's from a perspective that doesn't always resonate with everyone, including myself. So also coming from a Mozilla background, I have actually prepared this presentation so it can be interactive. I have a backup, but it would be lovely if people wanted to move a little closer so it was easier to interact. I won't bully you into it, but maybe you will later on. Okay, so word problems. Everything I need to know about arguments I learned in math class. So we're going to start with a persona. We have this lovely couple. Their names happen to be Sean and Kenzie. They're a modern, tech-savvy couple. Just go with it. They've decided it's time to invest some of their savings in the tech sector. They make a combined income of $90,000 a year. If they've saved 5% a month over 18 months, how much money do they have to invest? So I have a lovely volunteer that I've brought in beforehand. We're going to act out how this argument would probably go between the couples. We need like Knight Rider music. Yeah, it's over here. Okay. Yes. Lovely dear husband who's so wonderful to quit his acting career to be with me. I think that we've managed to save up $6,450 to invest. That's how much we should invest.
Well, I think it's $6,750, and because I've died in every film ever, I must be right.
But I'm really good at math. They like totally had me give this presentation at Seneca about math, so I must be right.
Well, I look better with facial hair, so I must be right.
Okay, so I think those of you in the audience who have experience with math are probably sitting there thinking you guys are being ridiculous. Anyone want to share some thoughts, what you think we should be doing instead? Yes? Okay. Aha! Yes. Go for it. Yeah. Check your work. Now, I'll show you. So in this case, we just gave our totals and we're arguing back and forth. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yes, that's lovely. And that principle, I think I have an example coming up that also explains that. And I love that. This is exactly it. You know, the problem-solving skills you start to think about. I was a little worried about what level of math to make these problems because I didn't want to lose people. But I also figured there'd be people like you who would be like, well, this is too simple. You need to factor this in and factor this in. So this is something that we do with arguments with people all the time. But you guys are all sitting there thinking, why are you doing this? Just write down the math and see who's right. And so that's the first principle, the first mistake we make when dealing with people. It's hard for people to see that you're right if they can't follow your reasoning. It's hard for people to help you understand your mistake if they don't see how you got to your answer. And so yes, so this slide is, these slides aren't filled in for every single example. I'm kind of hoping we'll have some audience participation. But this is the kind of arguments we fall into with words that we wouldn't fall into with numbers. Why is that the right answer? Because I said so. I don't know, I just want it. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. So next example, where to invest. Sean knows everyone uses Acme Cloud Services and thinks they're a good investment. Kenzie has a friend that just joined the startup widgets and thinks they're a great place to get in early. Sean wants to buy 100 shares of Acme and 50 shares of widgets for a total investment of $4,750. Kenzie wants to buy 200 shares of widgets and 100 shares of Acme for a total of $7,000. I am a little bit of a typical girl. I will overspend if I think there's value in it. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you, Sean Bean was right. It was $6,750. So I'm only $250 over with what I want to spend. How much does each widget share cost? So Sean thinks they're $45 and Kenzie thinks they're $15. And does anyone want to come and act out the argument? Sure, come on down. Oh. No. Oh no, okay, so I had originally started the problem with Facebook, but I made these up last night and I did not have time to ask my friends how much was your share worth when they gave it to you and how much was it worth at the IPO, and I knew there would be people in the audience who would then say, well, that's not what the share was worth. So I made up companies. Anyone want to come act it out with me? It's a lot more fun if we act it out. Awesome, thank you. Do you want to be Sean or Kenzie?
Let's try Kenzie.
Okay. Okay, so I think the answer is $45.
Oh, I think the answer is... This is a great impression. $15.
Okay, but I did the math, and you know, if you take the two things we want, and it looks like we both want to buy the same shares of Acme, so that lets us. I stole this problem from Khan Academy. I don't remember the math that well. Someone correct me if I explain it wrong. We can balance out the equations. We can make them we can isolate out the x, and then everything else is. Oh, you know what? I just realized how I should have done this math. Awesome. So yeah, if we make everything equal 100x, then we can make them equal each other. And then this is just sort of a shortcut of doing it. And I totally got 45.
You're on the right track, but there's two variables there, the price of the Acme share and the price of the widget shares.
Mm-hmm.
One is X and one is Y.
Yes.
So when I took that into account, I got a total of 15 for the widget shares.
You know what? I just realized I made a mistake in my math. When I isolated my equation, right, I'm over here, because when I did my math, I forgot, because I lined these up wrong, I've forgotten I minus the 100x from the 50y instead of the 200. So you know what? I'm looking back, and if I do the math right, I get 15 as well. Thank you very much. So this is a big one. Check your work. Just like in math, sometimes we miss a step or making correct assumptions in our logic when we're arguing for our point of view. Also, if you take the time to understand how someone got to an answer, you can see how best to persuade them that you're right or realize they're wrong. So if we had swapped cards, he might have actually been able to check my work, been like, no, see, here's what you did wrong. And then, of course, I'm going to accept it because, yeah, it's math. It's obvious. And there's some real-world implications for this one. Check facts before you use them in an argument. And I mean, in these days, it's really easy to do. We've got the internet. My kids fight all the time. Who was that actor in that movie? What's the lyric to this song? And there's a new phrase in our household. You're holding the internet. Yes.
Something important to take account of that the internet disrupts everything. You have to differentiate what's a credible source of it.
Yeah, that's true. So you've got to fact check your facts as well, and that's exactly right. That does become harder and more challenging because you can start off with the basic example of I keep forgetting that it's James Marsden in Enchanted, not James Franco. So when I was telling someone what happened to James Franco, he used to be so handsome, he was the gorgeous prince in Enchanted, I was wrong. I looked it up myself on IMDb, which, you know, that's you can agree it's a reputable source. It's pretty maintained. So there was no need to argue back and forth. That was James Franco. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. Why would we argue? We wouldn't do that about math. We would check the work. We'd look it up. Okay, so look who was right. Kenzie was right. Widget stock goes up $5 a share. How much is Sean and Kenzie's total investment in Widget worth now? All right, anyone else want to come act out? Oh, I see volunteers coming. You're going to go in the opposite direction, aren't you? All right, that's okay. I'll just go to the slide and we can all try and participate. So here's their math. You can see Sean and Kenzie are going to discuss back and forth their answers. And you can see, is there anything wrong with Sean's math? Is there anything wrong with Kenzie's math? Can anyone figure out why they have a different answer? Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. They're both calculating for what they want to do. So their calculations are both right. They're both feeling, no, I'm right, no, I'm right. The difference is, make sure the problem is clear. I didn't tell you which stock options they actually ended up buying. So if you're trying to solve a problem for someone, you need to make sure you understand the problem. Look for missing information. If you're asking someone to help you solve a problem, make sure that you've included the information. It's really easy. I do this all the time when I'm emailing on mailing lists. I'll write a few sentences. I've had the context in my head, and I forget to put the context in the email. And then people will either not sure what I'm talking about, or they'll think I'm referring to what the person before me was referring to, and it can cause confusion. What? I know, right? But you know what? This is something that happens in real life. So yeah, context is important, and I can use some help filling out this slide. But You know, that's what happens. People can get really angry with each other without actually going back and looking, did I actually tell you everything you need to know to understand what I'm saying? Or, you know, you can get really mad at someone, well, I gave you the answer. Well, did you actually, you know, can you see if there's room where you made assumptions about the problem you solved, and maybe the problem you solved isn't the problem they solved? So the next example, good thing Sean trusted Kenzie. They ended up buying the 200 shares of Widgets, which was a good thing because Acme Cloud Services was hacked. Their share values fall 50%. How much did they lose? So Sean says $1,000 and Kenzie says $2,000. So who's right? And how do they find out who's right? So just like math class, who can tell, why do they have different answers? Did someone make a mistake? They've put in the same value for V this time. Yeah. Sean, when he bought the stocks, and I made this up, I don't know if this is real, he bought some insurance just in case a stock took a tumble, and it'll reimburse you up to $1,000 on bad investments. So Kenzie didn't know that, so she didn't factor it into her equation. He did. So that's another reason why we can end up in arguments with people, because we're factoring in something that the other person isn't. So that's sort of a different angle on the last example, making sure everyone has all the context and all the information to be able to see it from your point of view, and also making sure that you also give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're missing a variable. And so, yes, these are the slides I didn't fill out. If anyone has examples of real world problems, arguments they've had with people with words, where it turned out that you forgot to factor in, someone says, yeah, I'm just leaving the house now, and you expect them to be there in half an hour. You forgot to factor in that they were going to stop at the grocery store first. So they show up at the restaurant and you're really mad at them for being late, but it turns out you forgot that they were going to do something and that affected your math. Yes, Tom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tom. I'll recap because I want to add on to that. Tom was talking about the basic example of you've got the sales team who wants a feature by a certain deadline, and they just want it fast. They want it done because they want to make the customer happy. And one variable they're missing that maybe the engineering team wants to put in is the amount of the chance of things not working, the chance of there being bugs, the chance of you needing to sink more support costs into it afterwards. And you know what, that reminds me, one really big real world example is when you're estimating your job time. In that exact example, Jonathan Nightingale, who is VP of Firefox at Mozilla now, wrote a really great blog post, and I think he took it from someone else. Some company has a practice of asking for 3 estimates: best case, worst case, and mid case. And more often than not, they were hitting the mid case estimates. But if you were asking people just for 1 estimate, they wanted to give you the best case because they didn't want to look bad. They wanted to make sure you were happy with their work. Yes.
Their understanding of it, they'll even say it, that he's a team,
Yes.
but you either know
Mm-hmm.
there's something they're not looking for, or on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
your understanding of the future is something that doesn't take into account their understanding.
Yes.
So they might want, you might be looking at economic operations, they might be for. You have no idea about what you know about this.
Yeah, exactly. I'll recap that as well because I'm the one wearing the mic. And hopefully it stays in my head long enough. When you're talking about when someone is asking you to do a job, sometimes they actually come to you and give you the time estimate. They have some degree of knowledge of what you're working on, and they'll say it should only take a week. And maybe they're thinking that there's more aspects to the project than you're thinking about. And back to talking about arguments and resolving them, this is where you would apply the skill. You would need to break down all the variables in the time estimate and show them the ones they're not taking into consideration and explain to them why those are important and why those need to be factored in. And on the flip side, if someone's trying to tell you, no, this is going to take me more than a week, you don't just go, well, it'll only take me a week, so it should only take you a week. Listen to them. Find out what variables they're factoring in. Maybe you can help solve them. Maybe they were going to do something wrong. Maybe they hadn't learned how to do something you know how to do that cuts the time cost. Arguing over, no, I want it now, I want it in a week, and just leaving them to try and get it done in a week is setting them up for failure. You wouldn't do that for math. You would go over the variables, you would include them, and you would come to the same answer. You would agree first. Okay, so is it time to sell? After that scare, Sean and Kenzie want to weigh their options. How much money would they have if they sold now? Sean says $1,000. Sean says negative $1,000. Kenzie says $6,000. And I'm wondering if, without me showing the work, does anyone know how they got such different numbers? Does this jump out at anyone? Yes, exactly. Exactly. Sean calculated the total value of the investment over time. Kenzie calculated how much money they would get back if they sold the stock. So the principle behind this example is make sure you're solving the same problem. Sometimes we get into arguments where this is one of those where the phrase violently agreeing comes up a lot of the time, because you might be talking about, well, I mean, they could, wrong way. They could do this. They could be violently agreeing. They're both right. They're just saying it in different ways. Kenzie's right that they will get $6,000 put into their bank account. Sean is right, but we'll be down $1,000. So while they're having the argument, trying to decide whether or not to sell or keep, it's important for them to recognize what matters to them. What matters to Kenzie is, you know what, it's $6,000 more than what we had in the bank today. We'll have $6,000 extra dollars, we can take that vacation. Whereas Sean's value argument, the angle he's coming at it from, is but we'll be down $1,000. So which problem do they want to solve? Do they want to have the $6,000 or do they want to have a return on their investment? Who's right depends on which problem they're trying to solve. So anyone have any real world examples of where they've hit this kind of problem where you've ended up arguing with someone and it turns out you both had good ideas that were trying to solve different problems? And of course this is, oh yeah, yay Tom, yes.
That is of no real help when it comes to structuring the website. And there are some other people who are flexible there. But I found that a few times, and I didn't actually understand the term violently. Multiple times, and I'm like, I kind of understood looking at it, but I like simply told it. And often we come up with problems in very different perspectives. I don't a very social perspective, and there are a lot of different groups around there that we can involve protests. And my perspective, I know like how CMS works and what we've been in we really can have the time to do all that stuff. So yeah, there are multiple people who have domain knowledge, but know with the minimal knowledge of the technology that and actually get that thing by
Yeah. That's I hit that term all the time with my ex-husband. His new wife actually, we were having family dinner, which we do so the kids understand we're all cool. And we were actually trying to solve a math problem, and he had done the math differently and wrong. He had taken the wrong approach. But so we were both agreeing on what should happen, but he was saying, no, you know, we shouldn't subtract this, we should add this. And I was saying, no, we should add this, not subtract this. But we hadn't actually established the base of what we were adding or subtracting to. And so it turns out we were talking about the exact same thing. And she could tell this. And so she was sitting there laughing at us, going, wow, I can see why you guys aren't married anymore. And it happens at Mozilla all the time, too. Making sure you're solving the same problem. When people talk, for some reason, my brain comes up with examples after that. You know, someone might say, I have this really great idea, and the team leader is thinking, well, I'm trying to solve this problem. I need to get this shipped. And they see that that suggestion doesn't actually solve the problem. So they might actually talk to the person, well, that's not a bad idea. This doesn't meet these goals. We don't have time to invest in that. But if you recognize that, you know what, this is actually a separate, instead of saying, no, this is a bad idea, if you recognize, no, this is a different idea. You know, this doesn't apply to this situation, but that doesn't make it a wrong idea, that doesn't make it a bad idea. Recognizing that you're trying to solve two different problems and stop trying to treat the solution as a potential solution to the first problem, which of course it's not going to solve. Oh, thank you. My children are 15 and 13. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, and that is a that's true. Thinking outside the box on this one. I would love if you can write a math problem that has to do with savings bonds. Yeah. Hmm. Nice. Well, if you can write up a problem, I can add it to the slides. So I'm out of the examples, but I have a few more concepts that I really would have loved to have math problem examples, but I'll just talk about them. I don't know how many of you have ever watched Dr. Phil. And I don't know how many of you used to watch him in the 90s before he got all trashy. But, you know, this is another good principle that I didn't put into a slide, but anyone can be right. So using the Dr. Phil example, I think a lot of you, if you watched the show recently, you would think that guy does not know what he's talking about. Well, it's sort of, we wouldn't treat people that way with math, though. We would look at the work. We wouldn't say, oh, you suck at math. You couldn't possibly have gotten the right number if they're giving the right number. We would go back to the principles from the first two examples. We would say, well, let's see your work. So he had a few gems of wisdom that really resonated with me. And this is one thing he would say to arguing couples all the time. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And how this applies to math is, because of course you want to be right when it's math. But is it more important for you to be the person that came up with the right answer, or is it more important to have the right answer? So through these examples, Sean and Kenzie are a lot better off if they focus on getting to the answer that works rather than on who came up with the idea. You know, the times that Kenzie was wrong, they'd be screwed if they just went along with what she wanted to do. Just the same thing as the times that Sean was wrong. If Sean was like, no, invest lots more in Acme, and then they were hacked, you know, there's repercussions. So it doesn't matter that Sean wasn't the one that wanted to buy the extra widget stock. It was a good thing that they did because the raise in the widget stock helped absorb the loss in the Acme stock. So they're both better off. They're both happy. So who cares, right? And that's something that we apply a lot with math. I think if we're doing math together, unless we end up being the one that's wrong a lot, we pay a lot more attention to let's get the right answer. We don't sit there value judging the answer based off of who gave the answer. And this one, I wish I had a math example for this one. I could not find one. You can't rationalize with someone that's irrational. You can't treat irrational numbers like they're rational. You can't treat irrational people like they're rational. My real world example, again, is my ex. After he moved out, I noticed a pattern in a lot of our fights. We all get more frustrated and tense when we're tired and sick, and this is really true for him. But he's a really smart guy, and he's a very rational person most of the time. And so it would take me a while. I would not recognize the signs that he was coming down with a cold. He hadn't had enough sleep. He's in an irrational state because it looked very similar to his rational state. So we would end up fighting for hours. We would have our worst fights when he was in this state. And I can only, disclaimer, I can only speak from my perspective. I am not claiming that I was never irrational either. I can only talk about my point of view. From my point of view, that's when we would have the worst fights, was when I was trying to rationalize with him. When he was irrational, we would fight for hours, we would yell, we would scream, someone would leave the house. Now, when we're having arguments, say, on user support forums or in real life, one thing we want to say to people all the time is, you're irrational. you need to calm down. Well, we all know how well that works, right? The real solution that I figured out is recognizing when he's in that state and accepting that he's in that state and changing my behavior. Because what's the point? It just makes both of us miserable. So I would realize, okay, cool, I'm going to email you, we'll talk about it tomorrow, and then we would, and it would be great, and it would be fine. So, you know, and as much as my third bullet point here is the big point. I used to get really mad at him. You know, you're a smart person, you have all this reason, why aren't you paying attention to logic? Why aren't you using logic? Well, guess what? That didn't solve the problem. Learning to accept it and be like, okay, you know what? We all get that way. It's totally fine. So here's a cute little, we don't do that with numbers. We accept them for what they are, and we alter our tactics and our expectations based on accepting the problems for what they are. So that was the last thought I had. Did anyone, yeah, please. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's okay. I did that a few times up here. You can do it up there. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, I want to recap, make sure I got you right. So you're talking of open source from a learning aspect, and sorry, fill me in again. Yeah, codes are open so everyone can see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Okay. Great. So you're talking about that we could use some of the principles I've gone over and apply them to how we write the code, so that it's more clear for people who are coming along and learning And that's great. When I realized how I should have done the math, I copied the math from the Khan Academy video for this one. And I realized what I should have done was, does the mouse pointer show? Yes. What I should have done was rearrange both of these. Oops. I should have rearranged both of these to equal 100x and then made them equal each other. And that would have been a lot clearer for the person who lovely came down and helped me argue this, because this isn't clear what the heck I did. So that's a great point. And another point with math too is if someone comes along and with a math problem they're trying to solve and they ask for help, sometimes we say, I can't help you right now, or go figure it out yourself. But we also, at that point, we understand why they get upset with us or they're frustrated, but I need to figure this out. I mean, it's pretty simple to teach them, oh, okay, you made this mistake here, or I see why you couldn't solve this. You need to learn this concept and move on. Sorry, the person behind you. Yeah. Okay, can you give me a bit more details in the example so I'm sure that. Okay. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's awesome. So we're talking about the instance where you've got someone who needs help with an answer, and you've got someone who's very confident they know what the answer is, but it turns out they're wrong. And maybe if you had known about their skills beforehand, you would have been able to predict that this isn't the person to trust. Um, mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Hmm. Yeah. So what the response was, um, so if you're in that situation where you realized you've accepted an answer that turned out to be wrong, you can bring in more resources. So for example, like your example, learning a math, or the other suggestion was bringing in another person. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Using the principles from this, um, at some point you'll realize you'll go back and check your work, and the two of you will be sitting together checking the work, and one of you will catch on that either we made a mistake with this number or we don't know how to handle this number. So if you're both going into it from the point of view as we just want to get the right answer, because it sounds like you're dealing with someone who wants to be right, not happy. So maybe your question is, how do you handle it when you're dealing with someone who wants to be right, not happy? Um, so You were talking about breaking down the problem into chunks. So breaking that problem down into chunks is first of all trying to understand why they care about being right. Maybe maybe they always lose this fight at home, and God damn it, they just want to win it once. You might have to help them understand why it's more valuable to them to be happy than it's for them to be right. And then also breaking down simply the math problem you can't solve. You have broken it down, you've handled the parts you can handle, you've isolated out the parts you already know how to isolate out, and then you can use that information to at least see what help you need. Okay, we thought we could handle this, but we can't. We need to deal with someone who knows how to handle this. Which I guess your point is that this becomes cyclical. At some point, you have to trust someone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, Tom. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So just. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So this is all along the same lines of there are resources that you can turn to, and you know what that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's true. So definitely, and that would be a really great lesson for these two. Is maybe they should have gone to an expert. Um, and yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. But just to wrap that up, thank you for asking that question in the first place. That would be an awesome slide to add. I should have a question. What? They're both wrong. What happens? Because that happens all the time, especially in open source, especially for myself. I don't code, so I have a lot of ideas that I can't implement myself. So I might have a small group, me or a couple people, we're all really interested in it. Maybe someone has some coding skills, but we know what we need to get it off the ground, but none of us are capable of it, or we have no clue, and we know we have no clue. Yeah. Stack Overflow. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So a real world example for those of you who are actually in this session to learn how to be more successful in dealing with open source, Stack Overflow is a website that's been recommended that you can take problems you don't know how to solve. Maybe you don't have a large Mozilla community behind you where you can go to this news group or that news group instead of the one you're in. So that's awesome. That's a really great lesson. Math is math is math. There are right answers. Just because you don't have the right answer doesn't mean you can't get it, but sometimes you need to expand your scope. You need to learn more, or you have to ask for help. And that totally happens all the time with arguments online, is people want to resolve it among themselves because, and then again, that kind of gets back to because I want the value of being right instead of the value of being happy. Okay, are we?
Any final questions? There's time for one more question. No? Okay. Well, on behalf of Seneca and everyone here at FSOSS, we'd like to thank you for presenting.
Yeah.